Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Bobcast. The Bobcast is where we actually expand our mind and we do some more training on things that we're focusing on in our life. Whatever you want in your life, this is going to help you get it even more quickly. So today we're going to talk about the Four Maps book, where I talk about the four skills of success. And over the last two Bobcasts, we've talked about number one, the skill of clarity, how important it is to have clarity in your life. And the more specific you get, the more it vectors you toward what you want. Last week, we talked about anticipation, how to anticipate the challenges in your life, how to prepare yourself for them. And today we're going to be talking about the map number 3, which is what I call ritual. So let's start right into our conversation for today. Make sure you're a little bit, I'll mute everybody out so we can save some. The Bobcast number 3 is about the ritual, how you succeed more quickly and get the speed to success. And the Four Maps book is about how I've kind of summarized the habits I want you to build in your life to get you what you want more quickly. So there are 4 maps. The first map, we talk about what do I really want and how do we get really clear about that. Map number 2 is what could stop me or help me, and how can I anticipate, how can I prepare myself in advance to be ready for whatever life throws at me, so I can show whether I'm a hero or a zero. And if you are a hero, then you'll just figure out a way. And if you're a zero, you allow it to stop you. And so if you don't take any action, you take zero action, you get 0 results, and you become a zero. So that was map number 2. And if you want to, I'll give a link later on where how you can watch the previous episodes. The third map is how do I prepare? It's called the ritual map. How do you prepare yourself every day to get what you want? And then finally, next week, and probably for a couple of weeks, we're going to go into how do I get there? What is the task map? How do I organize my life so that the things effortlessly flow to me? So we'll talk about that also next week and the week after that. The ritual map, once again, when we draw our maps, take out a blank piece of paper, draw a smiley face and a frowny face. Smiley face is up in the top right-hand corner, the frowny face is in the bottom left-hand corner. Put a box around it, which represents your limiting beliefs. And if you don't learn how to transcend those limiting beliefs, then those beliefs will keep you stuck where you're at inside the box of a limited life, because that's what limiting beliefs produce for you, a limited life. And you want to have a life of freedom and abundance, and you've got to get through those limiting beliefs, which we talked about 2 weeks ago. Now, you'll notice the flow from the frowny face to the smiley face is an upward climb, because that's all success is upward movement. And matter of fact, in my personal spiritual beliefs, it's unlimited improvement for when you're here on this planet, and after you leave this planet, there'll be unlimited improvement forever. And so there's always going to be an upward climb, reaching to what is you want, the ideal lifestyle you want, and that's the smiley face. So everybody take a moment and draw this map exactly as you see it. As if you're not artistic, do it anyway. Nobody has to see it. It's your map, drawn for you. And as I challenged you last week and the week before, every week you should be drawing, every day you should be drawing these maps. Draw them to show what you are trying to build the habit of. So the habit we're talking about today is the habit of daily preparing yourself and having your daily ritual where you prepare yourself to go out in the world and achieve And so it's an internal thing. It's internal to you. And going out in the world and achieving is external. The ritual process is an internal process where you're creating and you're sharing the things with yourself. You're building with yourself. You're building yourself, really. So it's about compound interest, because if you make tiny improvements for a lifetime, you can create enormous wealth in your life with just a tiny little bit of investment of time and money. It can grow into a massive life. So imagine, I'll go into that in a second. So every day, like an ant, we're taking little daily steps towards our ultimate lifestyle. And that ant metaphor is like the story of the ant and the grasshopper. During the summertime, the ants worked, and during the summertime, the grasshopper played. At the end of the summertime, when winter came, the grasshopper starved to death. And the ant, who put a little bit of effort every single day, acquired a little bit of food and socked it away for the rainy days. So that's what compound effort is about. It's a little bit of effort over a long period of time. So as I've often taught, $1 a day, what does it grow into if you consistently apply a little bit of effort? This is financial effort. So you effort yourself $1 a day. And if every day of your life for 66 years, you put in $1 a day into your bank account at 0% interest, you would have $25,000 at the end of that period of time. The colors here on this one are barely, it's hard to see them, but it says 0% interest equals $25,000, because that's what you have in 66 years. You have 25,000 days. So if you make your money grow at 3% interest, it grows into about $75,000. So at the end of 66 years, when you're ready to retire, there'd be an extra $75,000 in your bank account. It might be worth less than when you started out because of inflation, but the bottom line is at least you got a chunk of something, right? If you make your money grow at 4% interest, it's hard to see the number there, but the number is about, if you grow it at 5% interest, it grows into about $200,000. And that's still a nice chunk of money. And generally speaking, if you bought a government bond or a corporate bond, and you kept, trading up with your corporate bonds at about 5%, you'd have about $200,000 at the end of your, at your beginning of your traditional retirement time. If I could get my money to grow at 10% interest, now it becomes multi-millions. $1 a day, the little bit of effort over a long period of time is you're a multi-millionaire. If you don't touch it and just let it sit there and add $1 a day, which is $30 a month, $365 a day, a year. If you compound that at 10%, it becomes $2.7 million. If you grow it at 15%, it's hard to see the number there, but I'll just tell you what it is. It's $50 million. So if you compound your money at 15%, if you put in $1 and you make that dollar work at a growth rate of 15% per day, well, it's 15% per year technically, then it grows into $50 million. And if you could get your money to grow at 20% and 20% interest on one single dollar, compounded over 66 years, is 1 billion. That's $1,000 million. So I'm trying to teach here that a little bit of effort over a long period of time creates massive growth, massive. And what most people don't do is they don't consistently deposit those efforts every day. They sporadically deposit a little bit of effort, a little bit of money that they compound over time. Well, if you sporadically deposit it, it doesn't grow into these massive amounts. It requires a consistency. Consistently, day after day after day after day, over a long period of time, it grows into a massive result. So how do you maintain that consistency? Well, you have to have a habit. That's what consistency is. It's a habitual efforting every single day for the rest of your life. So let's not take just money into it. What if you efforted a little bit of effort every day and you compounded yourself over a lifetime? What do you grow into? You grow into a much more successful human being. You are able to do more, have more influence, have more acquisition of whatever assets you want to acquire. You're able to share more. You're able to influence more, to expand more, to help more, to, you compound yourself. You are the dollar bill that you're compounding. You become the multimillionaire in your personal wealth. That maybe not be your external material wealth, but in your personal wealth. When you make a little bit of effort over a long period of time, you grow, and you grow amazingly. Well, let's just be a little crazy here for a minute. What do you grow into if you make small daily efforts? If you make small daily efforts for 1,000,000 years, I'm not talking about 66 years. I'm talking about 1,000,000 years. What if you had a small daily habit that you built and learned and grow on yourself, and then compounded you by 1,000,000 years? What do you grow into? Well, we all have our different beliefs about that, but if we have divine DNA, and if our DNA is, if we have God DNA, what do we eventually grow into? Well, at least we get to learn what goes on in the universe, and maybe we can learn a little bit about how that works. I know that's kind of like maybe too big of a perspective, but that's why I'm trying to talk about how important compounding is, because you compounded for 1,000,000 years, and that's not eternity, by the way. Eternity is trillions of years. So if I just take 1,000,000 years, a trillion is 1,000 billion, and 1,000 billion is a million millions. So 1,000,000 millions years is an impossible number to comprehend. What I'm trying to say is, if you will learn a little bit and compound and have the habit of that, in 1,000,000 years from now, you're just the beginning of what you have the potential to grow into. Now, the ritual that I'm talking about is the habitual things you do every single day, and you maintain that habit so that in your lifetime, you are ready for the winters of your lifetime, because you're making those little habitual deposits. You're not like the grasshopper who spends it all, which is the way most people do it, by the way. And you have made the decision to compound not only your material wealth, but to compound you. You're the person who gets compounded. You're the asset that gets compounded. So that's why it's so essential that on a daily basis, you're growing yourself, so that not only in the day of that one day of your life, you get to go out in the world and manifest things into the world, but in 1,000,000 years, what can you manifest? And maybe too deep a concept, for maybe we don't want to go that deep here today, but the lesson that you heard me teach many times is, first things first, you have to decide, if you're going to have a ritual, then what are the things you're going to work on first in terms of your compounding? You could work on money, and you could learn how to make more money and spend your investment time and manifesting more money in your life. But the story goes of the professor who teaches a college class on, I don't know, some science class, and he pulls out a jar filled with rocks, big rocks in this jar. And he asks the students, is this jar full? And you could all tell the story now because you heard me say it so many times. It's a profoundly powerful story when you really positively think about it. That if you'll put the big rocks into your life first, then your jar has rocks in it. You've got big stuff that you get done. He asked the students, is this jar full? And they look at the jar and it's filled with rocks. And yeah, it's full. And he takes out some pebbles in another jar he has and pours pebbles throughout all the extra spots that are around the big rocks. And he's able to fill it up with rocks and small rocks, big rocks and small rocks. Is this jar full? No. He takes out a jar full of sand and he pours the sand into filling up the entire jar. So it's now got big rocks and little rocks and tiny, tiny, tiny rocks, that's called sand. And then he goes, is this jar full? And no, he takes another jar full of water and he pours that in until it finally overflows. And he says, what is the lesson? And once again, you've heard me teach this maybe 20 times. And the lesson is, if you don't put the big rocks in first, you don't get them in. Because if you spend your day and you start your day putting sand in your day, you can't fit the big rocks in. If your day is a gravel day, you can't fit anything else in there. You can't even put the water in there. It's just too filled. You have to put the big rocks in first. So the question you ask yourself is, what are my big rocks? What do I want to do? What do I want to compound? Is really, I guess, the question I want to ask you. You make a decision. Do I want to compound little things? Do I want to compound stuff that really doesn't matter? Do I want to compound the 80% of the things that only gives me 20% of my results? Do I want to compound the 20% of the things that give me 80% of my results? I want to compound the things that produce massive leverage. And so that's the fundamental lesson here. We want our jar to be filled with all four because that's what life is. Life has all four of these things in it. All kinds of little stuff you got to do. You got to do the laundry. You just got to do it. You got to brush your teeth. You got to do all kinds of stuff that essentially in the scheme of things, in 1,000 years from now, you're not going to care about any of those things. But 1,000 years from now, you will care about a few things you did that produced results that are eternal. So you ask yourself the question, what do I want to compound? And so if I want to compound that, and if I only have 24 hours to do it, and everybody only has 24 hours anyway, then what do I want to compound that day? Therefore, if I miss compounding the big rocks, that means I don't have consistency. And therefore, there isn't a habit. And the habit is consistency, where you daily invest in those big rocks so that they have, in a 5-year span, they produce an ideal lifestyle. In a lifetime span, they produce an ideal life. And an eternal time span, they produce, well, kind of depends on what your belief is about that. They produce an amazing you. So what do you want to compound is the bottom line question of this conversation today. What do I want? What are your big rocks? Because that's what you're going to compound. You're going to grow if you focus on those things first every day. Now you can go to the pebbles of your life and the sand and the water later. You can procrastinate all of that stuff. And you can have some TV time, and you can have some eating time, and you can have some other kinds of things. But you got to make sure that ultimately the big rocks go in first, because one day you get to report on your life. This is after that. Once again, I'm speaking from my own spiritual perspective. It may not be yours, but I believe we will have a reporting. We'll report what we did on this planet. And if you've ever read any books on near-death experiences, they'll tell you they have a life review instantaneously upon death. And so you get to see it all instantly in an instant review. And what are you going to focus on? What are you going to notice? So you're going to notice the little things you did. You're going to have an enormous, enormous impact. The little things you did that didn't seem like they were big rocks at all when you're here on the planet. They seem like pebbles or water or sand. But the few little things you did to other people, for other people, some of the tiny little things you did had unbelievable leverage power. And so you have to decide, what are those seemingly small things that normal people would say, you know, writing a note to somebody or smiling at somebody, just a smile to somebody who needed that smile. You get to experience what that smile did for that person that you smiled at. In other words, and we don't have time to go a lot into detail, because I've read a lot of books on near-death experience because I had one. So I read a lot of books about it. And when I read about it, some people who report their near-death experiences talk about that they got to feel what the other person felt when they did that seemingly small thing, which really wasn't a small thing. It wasn't sand, it was a big rock. And they invested their time, that little bit of time, into this seemingly insignificant thing, and they ended up causing that person to have a moment of feeling the worth of somebody else's smile. And then we get to feel what that was like. We also probably get to experience the opposite of that, what the frown caused, you know. And so I don't want to go too deep into this at this point, other than to ask you, what do you want to compound? Because that's what you're going to grow. And if you're an investor and you understand the concept of investment, investment means you sacrifice something today in order to have a larger return on your investment later. Well, if you sacrifice a little bit of things every day, such as a dollar bill, is a small, insignificant amount of money. The tiny things you do, the smile you might give, is insignificant amount of effort on your part. But if you compound that consistently over a lifetime, not only do you grow your money, but you grow everything else in your life. And you grow yourself, which is what you're compounding. You are the asset that you're compounding. Therefore, a little bit of effort on your asset part, that's you, has enormous consequences over long, long periods of time. So most of the time when we talk about compounding, we talk about, 50 years, 100 years, but what if you added the concept of 1,000,000 years or 10 billion years? What do you think you grow into? Good question, isn't it? So that's why my big rocks, this is the way I teach it. And these big rocks are the ones that the way I describe them for myself. So I'll teach you what my big rocks are. They're fundamentally basic things about life, being your spirit, your brain. And this is the powerful computer that you've got on the top of your shoulders right now. And then the body. And these are all assets that we all possess. These assets, like bank accounts, have an opportunity to compound. And I can compound my body, meaning I can make my body better and stronger and healthier for as long as I can. My brain is an asset. And therefore, as I fill it with more knowledge, and I remove more of the limiting beliefs from my brain, then I get to grow in my knowledge. Well, what if you continue to grow? What if you continue to read? What if you got to the point in the next lifetime where reading a book, which might take you a week or a month, took you a second? You could absorb all the lifetime learning from one human being's life and read their book in 1 second and absorb all of that in the intellectual power from that person's experience, because there are millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of books. What if you could absorb them instantaneously and just slurp in as much as you wanted, and then you compounded that for 1,000,000 years. So that's why you need to be in the habit of learning here. It's hard to learn here, and our bodies are hard to maintain here, and to respect here, and to love, and to look upon them as the best asset that we have. I have difficulty with this one. I'm not saying I'm good at any of this stuff, but the bottom line is I know how important it is. And so therefore, I want to make sure on my to-do list every day is my ritual. And then being, of course, it's an asset. Your spirit is an asset. Your spirit is you at the deepest level of you. And it's been around for a long time, and it's going to be around for a long time. And it has acquired massive amounts of information before you got here on this planet. And it's going to continue to absorb massive amounts of information long after you're here. So while we're here, we need to invest a little bit of time to show, in my opinion, to show that we value these things. And if you don't value these things, then you don't do these things, because that's how you know how somebody values it. They do it. And if they don't value it, they may say they value it, but if they don't do it, they didn't value it. They didn't value it enough to make it prioritized. To prioritize means to prior it. When you prioritize, you make it prior. You prior everything else into your entire life. This is prior, before everything else in your life. That's what prioritization means. You made it prior. I mean, you made it first. So that's how you decide that this is first in my life. That when my eyes open, these are the things I do first. Why? Because they are priorities. They get done. They just do. Why? Because I have to compound this stuff. Have to compound my being. Have to compound my brain. Have to compound my body. So I'm going to make these things better assets. And as I do in my lifetime, I become a better person, right? So for me, BBB is being, brain, body. And I do certain activities every single day that build on these activities, that build on these assets. These rocks are not just inert chunks of stone. They are assets. That means they are going to grow. You're going to get a bigger jar, frankly, and your assets are going to grow. And your life is the container of you, this jar of you, is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger as you learn and grow and get more and more information in your life. And eventually, being, brain, body. Then, of course, you can acquire everything else you want in your life. You can have love in your life. You can have material possessions in your life. You can have success in your life, however you define what success is to you, right? So, I'm going to open my eyes. I'm going to read some scriptures. I'm going to connect with my higher power. Because since everything is known by higher power, I certainly want my higher power to be a partner with me. Therefore, I like to give, and I like to invest time and connect with my higher power. That's the being side. And the body side is, I'm doing my treadmill time, right? I didn't do my treadmill time today. I'm kind of grumpy about that because I had to rush off to a mastermind that I was participating in, and went a little bit later to bed than last night than I should have, and I got up a little bit slower today. So I'm feeling a little inauthentic by talking about ritual, but it has been 20 years of my ritual, and from every once in a while I miss. Very, very rarely, and this morning was one of those times. So, but the bottom line is, I've got to do it today. I got to squeeze those big rocks into my life today before I go to sleep tonight. I got to make sure I move all the gravel and all the sand out so I get done those things I know that are essential to my day. Okay, so everybody has their own big rocks. And so the question you should be asking yourself is, what are my big rocks? What do I do? What do I decide? What have I decided to compound for my lifetime? In other words, having a habit that is habitual for my lifetime, because this isn't the only part of eternity. This is one little snap of the fingers in the eternal perspective of things, right? So what does Oprah do? Does she have a ritual? Delta Magazine interviewed her and found out I usually wake up with a piece of positive spiritual literature. And then she has a couple of her people come over to stretch with her. She calls them her stretchers. And then she runs and meditates afterwards. This is just what she does. She fits it before bed. It's my gratitude journal. And she's talked about her gratitude journal thousands of times and why it's so important to her. This is her ritual. This is what she does. This is why she's Oprah. This is why she has compounded into Oprah. If she hadn't done these things, she would have compounded into this woman that wasn't Oprah. Can you imagine the massive influence that this compounding efforting on her part on a daily basis has resulted in? It has created massive influence with millions upon millions, maybe billions of people, because this is what she compounded into. This, as I said earlier, conversations, you are the fruit of the thoughts you thought. 5 years ago, you're picking the fruit of those thoughts today. And if you're not picking the fruit you would like to be picking today, it's because you didn't compound things 20 years ago. They couldn't compound into the fruit you are today because there was no efforting on a daily basis towards it, right? What is Tiger Woods? Now, I don't know what his ritual is today, but I certainly know when his dad was raising him, it was a cassette player and motivational self-help tapes every day. While kids were listening to Thriller, he was listening to his Walkman. And what did he write down? He wrote down things that he could put on his wall. These are the words on the wall of his bedroom. I believe in me. I will own my own destiny. This is a young child, 10-year-olds, 11-year-old kids. I smile at obstacles. Isn't that a wonderful one? My will moves mountains. I focus and I give it my all. My decisions are strong. I do it with all my heart. Do you imagine, in terms of the golf world, being the only two people have ever won as many tournaments as he has won? He's tied with the other guy who was 50 years ago. But talk about the compounding of that career made him legendary. And it all started with these little things that he read on his wall at home. My mentor was Stephen Covey. What's his ritual? He says, I wake up, I make my effort every morning to win what I call the private victory. I work out on a stationary bike while I'm studying the scriptures for at least 30 minutes. Then I swim in a home pool vigorously for 15 minutes. Then I do yoga in a shallow part of the pool for 15 minutes. Then I go to my library and pray with a listening spirit, listening primarily to my conscience, while I visualize the rest of my, can you see how all these body, brain, being, I probably picked this up from my mentor. This is what he does. He visualized the rest of his day, including important professional activities, key relationships with his loved ones, working associates and clients. I believe that the habit of constant reading of good books and scholarly periodicals and magazines in many disciplines is vital to give a larger perspective and to constantly sense the interdependent nature of life, I probably average 2 hours per day reading. Well, what did that grow into? Well, this is his home, which he just listed. He no longer is with us. He was practicing, he was working on his body at age 79 and fell off his bicycle at high speed and cracked his head, and a few weeks later he died. He was 79. But I've been in this home. This is in Provo, Utah, and it's magnificent. And it was listed just a few weeks ago at 6.9 million. And frankly, if this home was in Rancho Santa Fe, California, it'd be listed at 25 million. It's magnificent. This is the pool he said he swims in. This is what it looks like. And he does yoga in and everything else. And his bike would normally be here, but this is a listed picture of the listing of the sale of the home. So it doesn't have any of the personal belongings any longer, but that's where, and this is his library. And I've been in that library, and it's magnificent. And he's got all the quotes along the walls, kind of like Andrew Carnegie had in his home library on Fifth Avenue in New York City. And he has thousands and thousands of books. So the library is now empty because he and his wife have now passed on to compound the rest of eternity. And he has an enormous amount of capital that he's taking into the next life to compound with. And when you think about that for a second, because of all the books he's read, 2 hours a day, he's now filled that brain with massive amounts of information from multiple disciplines. And now he gets to compound that and all the other effects and things he did here on this planet. His book is one of the largest selling books in the history of the world, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And that has impacted millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of lives. And I'll bet you that one of the things that part of his heavenly experience will be able to experience. What happened when some person he'd never met and never will meet read his book and had their life transformed and now began to realize how valuable they were. And what if Steve got to experience just a little bit of that 1,000,000 times? That's heavenly, to be able to experience the massive influence you've had on millions of people because he took the time every day to compound himself so he could help other people compound themselves. Wow, this is massive. It's just incredible. This is why every day you are the asset. You're compounding. And I want to keep doing that, don't you? That's why I have such great respect for Steve. And he and I had cabins at Sundance Ski Resort. His wasn't avalanched like mine was. Mine was destroyed by an avalanche, but his still exists, and they still have retreats there. Beautiful. We're just a few blocks away in our housing, in our cabins. Now, he's no longer here, but that doesn't mean he's no longer somewhere. And he's compounding even more with not millions of people, because there have been 100 billion people have been on this planet in the existence of the earth. 101 billion people. He's got a big audience, and he gets to talk about the fundamentals that he learned on this lifetime, right? What does Warren Buffett do? Well, he gets up at 6:45 approximately. He eats at McDonald's on his way to work. Yep, every day. And once in his office, he hits the books. And CNBC reported that Buffett estimates he spends 80% of his day reading. He recommends that people try to read at least 500 pages a day. Imagine what that compounds into. Well, in terms of wealth, I can tell you what it compounds into. It compounds into this 89-year-old man. I think he's 88, maybe he's 89 in August, I think. And he's 88. He has, the last number I saw was $88 billion. $1 billion for every year of his life. And he's going to leave a massive amount of wealth here on this planet. Massive. And it's going to go on. And that wealth, not only did he create 88 billion for himself, but think of all the wealth he's created for all the other people who followed his advice, trillions of dollars worth of wealth was created by this man who decided he wanted to focus on one thing and become the best in history about it. Now, what will he compound in the next life? I don't know. He probably may not have, I'll leave it at that. Let's put it this way. But he has a massive amount of knowledge. What will he compound in the next life? Like Bill Gates, Buffett enjoys unwinding after work after a good game of bridge, and he's in bed by 10:45. That's his life, right? Beethoven, what did he do? He's up at 6 a.m. He writes music till around noon. He takes a 2 or 3 hour walk in the afternoon, and he's home for dinner. Sometimes the dinner time is dinner. Sometimes it's going out to a concert. Sometimes it's performing a concert. But this is what he does as he starts his day. This is how he compounded unbelievable amounts of music in his short lifetime, and wrote a huge chunk of it when he was deaf. Talk about a genius who could write music he couldn't even hear. He heard it in his mind, and he continued to compound his music after he could no longer hear it, and created music that's magnificent and unbelievable. That's his ritual. So the question I'm going to ask you is what is your ritual? What do you want to compound? Usually in the book, The 4 Maps, I only talk about a 5-year ideal lifestyle. Today, we're talking a little bit broader concept here, because we're talking about your life, and we're talking about your life in eternity. There is, if you have a little bit of effort over a long period of time, wow, what could you magnify yourself into? You get your body, make sure your body's good. My body, this is not a picture of my body, by the way, but it's an asset that is magnificent. Your asset, this body of yours, is unbelievable. Let me just read you something here. If I can find it. Your body. Your heart beats 100,000 times a day. Your lung breathes 20,000 breaths a day. If you cut yourself, your body heals all by itself without a single conscious thought on your part. This unbelievable miracle called your body. So I Googled it. I said, how many cells are there in the human body? One estimate, 37 trillion cells. Well, that's more cells than there are suns in the universe. In your body, compacted, all slammed together into one body called you, and each cell contains the exact DNA blueprint for reproducing your entire body. One of those 37 trillion cells, so small, contains the blueprint for your entire body. Every one of the tissues of your entire body, every one of those unbelievably tiny amounts of data inside of that tiny little cell. Each, you have 11 intricately coordinated life systems in that body of yours. The nervous system, that's your brain. The skeletal system, the bones. The endocrine system, your glands. The integumentary system, the skin and nails. The muscular system, your muscles. The cardiovascular system, which is your heart. The lymphatic system, which is your white blood cells. The respiratory system, which is your lungs. The urinary system, which is your kidneys. The reproductive system, which is your sex organs. And the digestive system, which is your stomach and intestines. That's a body with these 11 integrated systems, so unbelievably complicated. And in that body, this body is a miracle in and of itself. And now that every tiny little of those 37 trillion cells contains the blueprint to reproduce a full body with all those 11 integrated systems in it. Every tissue of those 11 systems is different. Every cell is different. And yet your little blueprint contains the power to recreate every one of those 11 different types of cells. A brain cell is different than a muscle cell, is different than a stomach cell, is different than a bone cell. And yet that blueprint that you have in there is, one day we're going to go, let's look at this blueprint, and we get to look at it. And we'll look at how our blueprint was set up and how we became us and how we created this body of ours, right? Unbelievable. And some people take care of their bodies, and I would not want to show you a picture of my body, right? So when we do our ritual, we not only work on our body, what we feed our body, how we exercise our body, but we work on our mind. We build our mind, and our mind is this unbelievable computer. Is the most complicated thing in the universe, and it's unbelievable. And yet we have one, and barely recognize how important it is. And that's why we spend time. That's why Buffett reads 500 pages a day, and that's why Covey studied 2 hours a day. He wanted to compound the brain and all the things that he learned from it. And every great person you've ever met, they've risen to that. They've compounded their life to that level of success by a certain amount of daily investment of time in their body, brain, and being. So that this person you see at this level of success, whomever they are, whether they're in sports or whether they're in politics or whether they're in music or whether they're in the arts or whatever, there are so many areas of greatness. And we find people who reach the peak of greatness in all these various different arenas. And we realize, what did that person do to compound themselves into this kind of person? And some geniuses, they've been compounding their genius for 1 million years before they got here. And somehow or other, I think God just took off the governor off of their brain and said, okay, show them what it really is like. Show them what it's like to create unbelievable music. Show them what it's like to break the 4-minute mile. Show them what it's like to do these amazing things you've done. Show them, give them a little glimpse, because that's what you see when geniuses are around you. And you can see them in the press and you can study them online. Show them what it's like when you get to take off the fetters that have held you back, and you get to live a genius experience. There are a few geniuses, but all of us that are genius at one level, at some level, yes. We just have our brain that kind of slows things down for us, and our body kind of slows things down. But wow, what if it's released, to what it could do, given enough time? It's just unbelievable. So part of my ritual is making sure that I don't just talk about or think about my 5-year plan. I want to talk about my 500-year plan, my 5,000-year plan, my 5 million-year plan. I get to look out over the universe, and I get to ask myself the question, how did all this happen? And who might have had a hand in it? At the singularity, at the beginning of time, at the Big Bang, that singularity contained all the ingredients crunched down into an infinitesimal, a tiny, small space of data and matter, kind of like the data that's in your single cell. The data in your one cell that's so small you can't see it. that the data, the blueprint is in that tiny cell to explode into you. The data that was in the singularity at the Big Bang contained in it also the blueprint for creating a universe. And just imagine what was in that singularity, that it had to have exactly the right ingredients so that at the explosion, it could massively grow out into all of the clouds that contained all of the ingredients that were necessary to eventually the Earth was formed our Earth about 5 billion years ago. So in 5 billion years, the Big Bang was about 13.8 billion years ago. So it took like 7 billion years for the Earth to get to the point where it may be able to create some kind of life. But in the meantime, throughout all those billions and billions of years, all the things had to kind of come together, just like the blueprint in your tiny little one cell had to combine with the cells in your mother and father so that it created the DNA so that it could grow into you. So the blueprint was in there, and it's in there right now. In your one cell, it was in the singularity too. Obviously, I believe in a higher power, so you know that some people believe that the singularity kind of exploded all by itself, and that therefore all of this is, just kind of created out of nothing, and that there is no purpose for it. It just blew up, and we ended up 13.8 billion years later, here we are, and that when we die, it's over, and there is no more you, and there's no more me. This is it. And that's the way some people believe, and I respect that belief, because it's kind of like for thousands of years, people would look up at the sun as it rotated around the earth. And the evidence was obvious. Look up there, the sun is obviously rotating around the earth, isn't it? And that's what they believed for thousands of years, until finally someone came along and said, the evidence, the data doesn't show that. It's actually just the exact opposite. It's just the opposite. In other words, the earth actually revolves around the sun, really. And there were people who were burned at the stake for making that ridiculous claim that the earth was, in other words, sometimes the evidence, both people see evidence and they come with entirely different conclusions from that same evidence. So just like everybody thought the earth went around, the sun went around the earth for thousands of years, and it was obvious, isn't it? But the exact opposite was true. And now we see that when you look at the real results, when you discover what the truth really was, now we can show that some things are not true and some things are true. So the same thing comes with the belief in a higher power. Some people believe, no, this is it. And therefore, look at the evidence. You see it all in the evidence in the rocks. You see the evidence of all the fossils that show there was evolution. And therefore, we must have started from one little single cell in the middle of some kind of bog somewhere that eventually kind of had the ability to create some kind of life in it. And so this is what a lot of scientists believe. And the real question is, where did the program come for that cell? Where was the program in that cell? Because did the program itself created itself? Did the cell just have no program? The cell has to have a program. And the question is, who programmed it? And of course, we all have arguments about whether there is and there isn't a higher power. My belief that the universe was an incredible system set up where all of the blueprint was in that singularity, like a tiny little cell. And it was so small and so dense, the singularity at the explosion of time, that it contained all the ingredients necessary to produce us billions of years later. So I want to be on, I want to be partners with whomever creates the programs for these things, right? And so during my ritual, I'm going to spend time pondering that. And when I come away with my prayers are no longer like going to Santa Claus and asking Santa Claus, I need this, I need that. I'd sort of like to have, this is a gift. Would you please give this to me? And my prayers are totally the opposite. First of all, it's all about awe, A-W-E, awesome, awesome, awesome. Like, wow, awesome. And I want to just be in that kind of presence. And then realize that my little tiny 5-year goals are ridiculously simple, stupidly ridiculous. Yeah, this is what I want. I really want to have that kind of lifestyle. But in the big picture, so I want to play in the big picture. That's where I want to play. And all of these galaxies we see were all formed over billions of years, starting out with a tiny little speck of matter, of the singularity that exploded all of this into existence. Just unbelievable. And then we ended up with our Earth. And the magnificent amounts of life that's on our planet. And all the people who live all of these different, and all kinds of different spiritual beliefs, you know, the 5 biggies, you got the Muslims, and you got the Hindus, you got the Christians, you got the Maoists and the Taoists and all kinds of ists out there. But they all certainly believe that there was a higher power. They may disagree completely about what that higher power looks like or it exists as. But point is, this is what we grew into. This is what the planet grows into. And so I want to ponder that. And that's what I do, generally speaking, 99% of the time. When I start my day, this is where I go. And it's very powerful. It's very profound. And realizing that it all started with the meeting of a cell and an egg, but each of those contained those DNA strips that could combine into growing into something, somebody. And so the real question is, first of all, for your life, what do you grow into? Since you started as a cell meeting the sperm, an egg meeting a sperm, so now you get a chance to grow into something in this lifetime, and then you got the millions of years to grow into even greater stuff. So first we start with life. What do you want to grow into? And it all starts with this insignificant, tiny little thing called a baby. And they are just, if you've had children, and there's no more magical time on the planet, right? These little kids that come into our life, right? And then they grow into things, you know, this person here wearing that little dress grew into, this grew into Babe Ruth. And this guy grew into Kennedy. And this guy grew into, I guess his mommy put him in dresses. That's very interesting, but Disney. And so each person gets an opportunity to grow into something, and then they get to leave a residue of themselves here to continue to compound. And each person compounded themselves into something that they now could have an impact on people. And they just grow into, this is the Emperor of Japan, who just abdicated actually, and his son now took over. This little Chinese guy, is Jack Ma, who's having some challenges with the Chinese government now because they want his data. They wanted data of everybody who's purchased from Jack Ma's company. They grow into something that has an effect on someone that changes the world, and this is really not, really wasn't Einstein. This was Einstein. This is Einstein as a baby, and this is him today, or was him as his grown up, and he magnified himself into obviously somebody that created a simple formula that everybody knows, E equals mc squared. What does that mean? It means a tiny amount of matter has explosive power. Just like a tiny amount, one of your cells has an explosive power to not only create you, but what combined with somebody else's explosive power can create generations of unbelievable posterity. So this is me and my cowboy hat and my cat, and this is who I grew into, and we all give what we've got, and this is what I give here. So it's your destiny, and how do you plan on using that destiny power to build not only for yourself, but to build for other people too, to build for the world, right? If you really knew what was really in there, you'd be shocked. And so we feel like we're caterpillars is the way we feel most of the time. But lifetime, sometimes some of us get to grow into butterflies here. Most of us don't. Most of us don't. We still haven't realized what this caterpillar shell of ours is going to grow into, because there's still a long caterpillar time to go. And that's why life seems so messy and dark sometimes, because it's just part of the metamorphosis of us. It's who we are becoming, So my challenge to you here for our day here is to ask yourself the question: if I have the power to compound tiny amounts of data into enormous amounts of long-term power, what do I want to compound? And therefore, do I have the courage to invest that amount of tiny amounts of effort, time, money, love, etc. now? And do I have the courage to do it consistently? That's every day. So it becomes such a habit that we do it unconsciously. That's what the ritual is about. And if you ever meet somebody who is, in your opinion, who you believe is at the top of their game in whatever field they happen to be in, and you go up to them and you ask them, what's your ritual like? What's it like? What do you do on a daily basis? So that you compounded your life into what I see right here. I see you, and then I see all the effort you produced. How did you do that? How would you pull that off? And for many of us who see people like that, who are see these geniuses around us, and we can tell they're geniuses. They've got it figured out. And we look at them and we go, there's no way in the world I could ever accomplish what you have accomplished. And you feel small next to some of these geniuses that we meet from time to time around us. And you go, it's just incomprehensible to me how anybody could have done what you did. And yet what they tell you is, actually, it was just a little thing that I did 10,000 hours, according to the book of what it takes to create an expert. 10,000. I spent 10,000 hours at it. And they use that 10,000 hours a little at a time, a few minutes at a time, consistently compounding into person you see today and the person you see that produced what they produced in whatever field you're respecting them for, because somehow or other, where did they get the courage to sacrifice? And so all takes sacrifice, to sacrifice every day over long periods of time, so that the compound effort is manifest in front of you. It creates awe. You're awe-inspired, like, whoa, what you've done is just, it's just incredible. No, it wasn't incredible. It was just a consistent effort over a long period of time. So those are our conversations for today. If any of you had an aha or a thought that you'd like to codify into your words the way you heard me say it, that had been valuable to you in any way, put it into the chat and let's talk about it. What did you learn as a result of our conversation today? What aha did you have as a result of our conversation today? I had some ahas myself for sometimes when you just speak things and they just come out of your mouth and you go, that's interesting. I had never compared in my thinking the DNA, the blueprint of the universe is similar to the blueprint of the DNA in the single cell of a human body. That's the first time I ever thought that, was today when I talked it out to you today. And I thought, that's really good. That's interesting. And so I kind of expanded on that. You might have noticed that was all new. Never had thought about that ever. And today it was kind of fun. Now, whether you believe it or not, or thought it was important or not, I thought it was kind of cool. And where it came from, I have no idea. But the bottom line is sometimes when you talk, it comes, right? Our personal power is immeasurable and is reflected in our daily thought and activities. I seem to stretch my comfort zone daily, good. I find joy when I look back at the end of the day. Don't be fooled when someone says they are an overnight success. Exactly. The blueprint of the universe to blueprint of universe. Yeah, micro to macro. The 11 systems in our body that can be reproduced by the DNA blueprint inside every single cell. Yeah, wow. A little bit of effort over a period of time compounds into my big rocks. Everybody else, share with me, what was an aha you had from today? 5-year goals will produce an ideal lifestyle in 5 years.
Can I speak, Bob?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Bob?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard you mention it before, and actually read it in your book, Multiple Streams of Income. But sometimes I kind of forget about it. But just about the power of compound interest.
Yes.
So when you mentioned that again, it kind of spiraled me off in my mind, thinking about ways that I can save more. Because again, being reasonably young compared to other people as well, not like it's just about young anyway, because as soon as you start, obviously you get the benefits. But it made me think, if I can try and save more every day that's untouched, and try and allow that to raise more money, Emily showed obviously the different figures and stuff. But yeah, it just reminded me of that and trying to take advantage of that in a way, and thinking of ways I could do that. So that was my aha for today.
Thank you. It takes an enormous amount of courage every day, amidst all the many distractions, to deposit the little piece you need to deposit every day to grow into what you want to grow into. Any other thoughts, comments? You can type them, you can talk them. Consistency is the key, said Patty. ROI of compounding the big rocks, compounding of the self. And frankly, I never really explained that to myself either today. So a lot of that came out of just the thank you for your being there, so I get to talk. Good. Who had a 500 page a day is incredible. Good. All right, good. 10 systems, 11 systems. Any other thoughts, comments, ahas as we end our call today?
Bob?
Yes.
I just love the whole entire talk today. It was such an aha, eye-opening experience. And you're the second person just to talk about the cocoon and the experience of growing in the cocoon. And when I was a little girl, I didn't realize that the butterfly didn't need my help. I thought this poor little butterfly was trying to get out of a cocoon, and I didn't realize that it had to push the fluid into its wings in order to fly. And I opened the cocoon for it, and I wound up having to take care of it until it died. And it was the most heart-wrenching experience of my life, and I'll never forget it. And lately, with all that I've been going through, and unfortunately you guys got a glimpse into a little bit of the nightmare that I've been through with this one person who I did love, it's made me focus more on what I'm doing with you, and being more determined, all the more determined to push that fluid into my lungs, to go through the experience in the cocoon, learn all that I possibly can so that I can spread my wings and fly. So I love you all. Thank you for being such an inspiration to me.
Thank you, Bunny. Somebody else want to jump in and make a few comments as we end our call today? Okay, everyone, I love you. Have a wonderful day. Go compound.
Thank you, Bob.
Go compound yourself. All right. See you, everybody.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Those of you who are in the inner circle, I'll see you in just a few minutes. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
See